You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. Celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 800-610-7035. My email address is xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone 7/24/365, as well as Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. until midnight at our radio station website at www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is a good friend of the X-Zone, a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of talking to over many years. His name is Stephen Bassett. He is the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996, to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind so-called UFO phenomenon. Now, Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of formal disclosure by governments of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He has given over 100 radio interviews and television interviews, and PRG's advocacy work has been extensively covered by the national and international media. In 2013, PRG produced a citizens' hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in Washington and recently launched an initiative seeking the first hearings on Capitol Hill since 1968 regarding the ET presence issue. PRG is also working to see that issues included in the ongoing presidential campaign. I should say to see that the issue is included in the presidential campaign. By the way, let me see. We've got the what's going on here. Trump is leading 34% for the Republicans, and Bernie Sanders is leading 34% for the Democrats. Wow. Joining me now is Stephen Bassett. And Stephen, how are you, my man?
I'm fine, Rob. It's good to be with you again.
Hey, it's great having you with us, Steve. What do you think about the presidential election? You know, like, doesn't this tie into something from out of the world?
Yeah, well, our politics has been pretty crazy for some time now. There's significant tectonic shifts happening down here, and this election is going to, I think, highlight some of that. There's a lot of unhappiness with government, and it's manifesting in this campaign. And one of the reasons there's unhappiness with government, the government's been lying just about everything for decades now. And one of the things it's lying about, of course, or not dealing with, is the ET issue.
Have any of the candidates on either the Republican side or the Democratic side sat down and talked to you about what you're trying to accomplish and what truth you're trying to bring forth to the public?
Not to me. I don't have access to these candidates. But one candidate has spoken to the issue, and only just recently, and it took a lot of pressure from many media venues to make that happen. But on December the 30th, Secretary Clinton, while campaigning in New Hampshire, was asked about the ET issue by a reporter that she knew that had mentioned it to her, asked her about it in 2007. His name was Damon Steer of the Conway Daily Sun. And her remarks were shot around the world. I mean, just hundreds, 400, 500, 600 venues covered this, reported it worldwide. She stated, one, that if she was elected, she would try to get to the bottom of the ET issue. That, two, she might set up a task force to investigate Area 51. And then she said something particularly remarkable. We may have already been visited. We just don't know. She also commented that John Podesta was very much interested in the issue. He's her campaign chairman. And she had made a promise to him that she would look into it. These are no presidential candidate or president has ever said anything like that. And while it generated a huge amount of coverage, the networks, bless their hearts, have not followed up at all, not brought the issue up to her in several debates, but that will eventually change, I think.
Steve, with the return of the X-Files, are you finding more and more people are going to your website to see what you're doing and to find out how they could help get the truth out there? Because, you know, Steve, there's two classes of people who want the truth out there. There are people like you who are credible, who have worked hard, who, you know, roll up the sleeves, and you're a man of your word. And then there's the other side who does a lot of talking, does a lot of squawking, and does a lot of nothing.
Every issue has that dichotomy. There's nothing unusual about it. Whether pick a social issue, whether it's civil rights, gay rights, women's rights, and so forth. There are people that are in the front line that are doing the advocacy, and you have a lot of people that talk about it but don't follow through much. So that's okay. The return of the X-Files is interesting. I had a talk briefly. I briefly talked with Chris Carter some time ago, I think maybe 2 years, and tried to sort of recruit him to maybe support the advocacy movement, which he could easily do, and had made a fortune off of the subject matter. He did not, contribute or get involved, but he did revive the X-Files, and he revived it literally in the middle of what I consider the final days of the truth embargo, as we're heading towards possibly resolution on this, which is for him a strategically brilliant business move, because the X-Files clearly has played a role in educating the public. It has raised a lot of interest. And so now it may be sort of literally on stage when the big show begins.
Steve, how much attention did the citizens' hearing on disclosure have? Were people getting their eyes opened? What was your total feedback from that event?
I actually have that feedback up on my site somewhere. Unprecedented feedback, positive feedback from around the world. It generated hundreds of articles. Certain entities didn't get into it, the networks, of course, but generated plenty of publicity. It also was a webcast, so it was watched by thousands of people. And it was completely videotaped recorded. Right. And so that 30-hour record, which people have been purchasing at citizenhearing.org, either the DVD sets or the online subscription, is being seen all over the world. There's hundreds of YouTube clips, of parts of it. And, of course, it's at the core, at the heart of the Congressional Hearing Initiative, which began November the 5th, 2014. Sets of the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure have been delivered to every congressional office. All of the political reporters in town have provided access to the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure. So it's going to be viewed, I believe, as an historical event of unprecedented, really nothing like it had been done before. And I'm very proud that we're able to do it. But again, it's all part of the larger advocacy process leading to one goal and one goal only, and that's a formal announcement by the heads of state, including President Obama.
Are more and more people coming out and coming forth with information, Steve, people who can really make a difference?
Well, there are plenty of witnesses, more than enough witnesses to handle weeks of hearings on Capitol Hill. Since recently, I haven't seen too many. Really, newer witnesses are not turning up right now. I'm not sure why. I can guess. I mean, there's a number of people that are coming out of the woodwork claiming to have extraordinary information. Usually they're anonymous and things like that. I think there's a lot of that going on. I think many of the witnesses we call military agency political witnesses that have been on the fence about whether they want to come forward publicly may be holding off because they sense that this is moving pretty rapidly, and we may see disclosure pretty soon, and it's not necessary for them to come forward because, coming forward as a witness is not without issues, not without problems.
Of course.
And so that may be the reason. I think after disclosure, they're going to come forward in droves. So right now, there haven't been I'm not aware of any witnesses that have been added to the list in the last year and a half. But there may be a couple that have turned up in other researchers' domains.
What do you think it'll take before a disclosure happens, Steve?
Well, what's going to unfold here, and as I've been talking about this now for some time, I'm not playing a secret game. Mm-hmm. Right now, PRG is working with 12 reporters from 12 different media venues, mainstream media venues, who have already written about the political connection to the issue and the Clintons, Rockefeller Initiative, congressional hearing, and all that, since November the 5th. And they've all been green-lighted by their editors to continue to write about it, and more articles are on the way. And this is putting tremendous pressure on the Clinton team, and is one of the reasons why you've been getting these extraordinary Twitter messages that are being put out by her campaign chairman, John Podesta, and why I believe that she opened up and made those comments in New Hampshire on December the 30th. They have been getting requests for answers about the Rockefeller Initiative and so forth, and they have, by and large, stonewalled all these questions from reporters by saying nothing, except that John Podesta did respond to Vice reporter Daniel Uberhaus, and then the Iowa and the New Hampshire thing got going. Mm-hmm. So there hasn't been much recently, but they're going to continue to get questions. And so what is going to happen, in my view, is that at some point, Secretary Clinton is going to have to answer some very explicit questions about the Rockefeller Initiative, about the connection of her and her husband and many of their close people to the issue back in 93 to 96, what went on and so forth. And that is going to trigger an avalanche of questions, literally a media storm that will extend to her husband and to their two chiefs of staff, Mac McClarty, Leon Panetta, as well as Al Gore, Bill Richardson, and, of course, John Podesta. And as that storm builds, and this could happen, believe me, at any time, because, we're already 15 months into this process.
Sure.
The White House and the Pentagon are going to see the writing on the wall, and they're going to have to cut a deal with each other, going to have to get together and sort of get on the same page. Once that is accomplished, then the president is free to make the announcement. And so the goal is to have this unfold as soon as possible and hopefully have an announcement from the president this year before, certainly no later than the nominating conventions, though it should have happened sooner, so the American people can factor this in to their electoral choices in this election.
All right. Steve Bassett is our special guest of this hour, Exonation. www.paradigmresearchgroup.org is the main website. And for our listeners throughout the United States who might be interested in what is happening in Iowa right now, both polls are reporting in at 26%. That is the Democratic and the Republicans in the New Hampshire primary. For the Republicans, Donald Trump is holding 34%, Governor Kasich 15%, Senator Cruz 12%, and in the Democrats, Bernie Sanders is leading with 58% of the vote, and let me see, Hillary Clinton has 40% of the vote. Interesting times. People do want to change. The times are changing, aren't they, Steve?
Yes, indeed. And as you know, in Canada, you've gone through an extraordinary transition with the election of Trudeau.
Yeah.
And I very much expect that the Canadian government is going to be very different indeed, very soon. Basically, he represents somewhat of a populist revolution in Canada. Mm-hmm. Same thing is going on down here. The two are hand in hand. That's good. But where this is ultimately going, again, and I should mention that the disclosure advocacy movement is nonpartisan. It's not about getting, Secretary Clinton elected or anybody else elected. The only reason that there's so much focus on Secretary Clinton, other than the fact that she's running for president and wants to lead the most powerful nation in the world, is that she and her husband and many of their top people have a direct connection to the issue, which they've refused to talk about for 23 years. And so that's it, an historical intersection there. That is the reason why she's going to end up speaking to this. Now, whether that helps her to become president or hurts her, I don't know, don't care. Mm-hmm. The world's people need to finally know the truth that they're not alone in this universe.
But what
they
happens?
Are being engaged.
I'm sorry, Stephen. What happens
Go
if
ahead.
what happens if she isn't elected? Does the topic die?
Not exactly. No.
Or just set back?
Oh, here are the various scenarios.
Okay.
One, things unfold as I mentioned before, and Barack Obama will be the disclosure president. All right. If it doesn't unfold, and the White House is not forced really by circumstance, mostly media circumstance, to disclose, then the election will go forward. Somebody is going to win it.
Mm-hmm.
It will either be Clinton, Sanders, or a Republican. If Secretary Clinton wins the election and goes into office, PRG will be intensely engaging the new president. I mean, it will be just intense because all that's happened in the previous 2 years is out there. There's reporters that have been briefed. There's just so much information, and now she is the chief executive officer of the country, and the pressure on her to act on the ET issue is going to be great. And we're not going to waste any time. And so I would anticipate, and there's a lot of history here, that Clinton would, in fact, take the mantle of the disclosure president and act. If she doesn't win, if Sanders, a Republican, wins, I will be disappointed, to say the least, and the disclosure movement will be in a much more difficult position. And I'll have to rethink my strategies as of that point. So right now, everything is focused on driving this issue up to include the November election. And then depending upon who wins, meaning depending on whether it's Clinton or somebody else, a strategy will be adjusted to that.
Why do you think that you'd have a hard time with Bernie Sanders if he was elected president? He seems like a guy who wants to get the truth out there.
Let's put it this way. Certainly, whoever's elected president could end up having to disclose. I mean, the issue is powerful in and of itself. The only thing I'm saying is that it's a definitely different situation because, for one, Sanders has no connection to the issue at all. He's never spoken to it at all. And probably is not particularly informed. I have tried to get a message into his campaign that, be happy to provide information on a private basis. But, that's, who knows what will happen there. So at that point, we have a president who is not knowledgeable in the issue and without significant pressure is not going to be able to get anything from the Pentagon. The Pentagon's not going to brief him on this because the issue is no longer available to the president or to the Congress. It's been completely pulled out from under all of them by the military intelligence complex for, quote, national security reasons. So the situation is, definitely a little tougher to crack. However, keep in mind that there are other events happening all the time. But I'll tell you, the most, depending upon how things go, there is another scenario which is increasingly likely, and that is as the pressure builds on, say, Clinton during his campaign, there are a couple of other countries that could move in and preempt the U.S. So at some point, regardless of who's going to win the November election, Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping of China may decide, okay, this thing is pretty far along. It's not clear what's going to happen with the U.S. people, but let's go ahead and make the announcement and preempt this. So the candidates need to consider this, particularly Secretary Clinton, that this is not totally in their hands. There are other nations more than capable of announcing the ET presence, more than capable of providing government-held evidence, which would obviously help to make the case, but is not necessary per se because there's plenty of public domain evidence that confirms it. But, obviously some government stuff could be quite persuasive, quite powerful. And, of course, that would then strip the U.S. of the legacy of being the first nation. And then whoever's president, well, if it happens during the Obama administration, he'll have to follow up quickly and say, yeah, you're right, I guess we're going to have to admit it. Or if it happens after the election, it will be the president in waiting, or, well, not the president in waiting, after the inauguration, then the next president would have to to do it. In either case, it's worth mentioning that it's highly likely that the next president of the United States will be the first full-term post-disclosure president with an enormous responsibility
Big time.
to help guide the U.S. and the world through what will be the most amazing transition in history. And it bothers me that most of these people are probably not briefed and clueless on the subject.
But what will be the political ramifications when it is learned that the United States and other countries of the world really did have this information, and for so many years they were lying through their teeth to the people?
Lying through their teeth is not a phrase they will probably be using.
I understand that, but
they will learn that the information has been withheld for them for national security reasons. Mm-hmm. They will be able to, present those reasons. Some people will go, yeah, well, that's just more, obfuscation. But the fact is that while the truth embargo has lasted too long, it certainly it was unlikely it was going to end during the Cold War, and so it's now 23 years after that. 23 years is not a long time historically, and I think that most people are going to say, well, you could have been sooner, but we're glad we got it now, and there's going to be so much excitement about the core information that I really don't see a massive backlash against any nations for, quote, not telling the people sooner. There will be people that will certainly raise that, and there will be people who get really worked up about it. And I'm sure you'll see some postings on the Internet that are quite nasty. But in terms of the larger reaction, it's going to be, well, great, it's glad to know now. What else are we going to tell us? So I'm not too, their public relations problems are not trivial, and they do have them. But in the larger context, I'm sure that they'll weather the storm. Steve,
what is your impression, or how do you see the day after disclosure? How will the world be different?
Day after disclosure, of course, is a classic phrase now. My good colleague and friend Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel have addressed it in their book AD After Disclosure, which I commend everybody to read. Well, you have to think of the post-disclosure as like the first day, first week, first month, first year.
Day one.
I anticipate it'll be a Saturday because I anticipate the announcement will be on a Friday evening. And everybody is going to be sort of sitting in front of the TV, watching the news channels like crazy and listening to a whole lot of people, many of which don't know what they're talking about, try to comment on it. The government will have those 2 days to sort of get its ducks lined up, and also to give the markets, the financial markets, an opportunity to sort of digest it. And then things will get going Monday. So we'll have the sort of weekend to sort of have a few drinks and chill out. And then come Monday, things will get really intense. So the third day after disclosure is when things really get rolling, if it's on a Friday, as I guess it will be. Unless, of course, another nation could do it on any day they want. But if I'm the U.S. president, you do it on a Friday evening. And then at that point, what happens is primarily, a million things will be going on, but primarily what will be happening is that the world's people will be pressing their government, and with the media pretty much largely on their side, because at that point the media is just, there's no basis with the media to continue to hold fire on this or to keep the leash on as part of the, quote, unstated or almost institutionalized truth embargo. The media, seeing Pulitzer Prizes, are going to be on the public side, and there's going to be enormous pressure put on the government to start spilling the beans, the details. Disclosure was just the announcement of ET presence. That's all.
Right.
Simple as it could be. And the government is going to undoubtedly have a program of bringing information out in their way, in their time. The people will have its own time schedule, and this is going to be what I call a tug of war. That's going to be very intense, and it'll start on Monday. And how it'll go, I don't know. But in general, the government will want to bring out less information later. The people will want more information immediately. And this will kind of go back and forth. And over time, information will come out. There will be moments when it goes well and moments when it goes badly. And essentially, you're going to have a learning curve taking place. In addition to that, every research every researcher's efforts, all the books, everything out there, good, bad, and ugly, is going to be just jumped on by the public as they just garble, just gather everything up. Of course, good with the bad, and start reviewing what's in the public domain. And hopefully there'll be some efforts to sort of point out where the really quality work has taken place. And that will be going on. And so it's all a learning curve. Now, exactly how far that learning curve will go, how much the governments will release, remains to be seen. That is up to the American people, it's up to the Russian people, the Chinese people, and so forth. I'm optimistic that overall we're going to get more than, much more than the government would like to release, and probably not as much as the public would like, but it'll still be a hell of a learning curve. And within that learning curve, of course, all kinds of other things will be happening. There'll be political implications, certainly. And I look forward to being involved in that. The one thing I want to see emerge in the post-disclosure world fairly soon is a global consensus to begin a major reformation or reform movement in which all of the human institutions are, in this kind of world of anything is possible now, are examined, and the process to reform them and bring them into the 21st century takes place. When you're talking on a global basis, when you're talking about the size of the institutions that humans now conduct, it's going to take something on the magnitude of a disclosure event to trigger that kind of reformation. We're not talking about cleaning up, the street in some small town in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. We're talking about reforming massive institutions that have had decades of decline. That is my greatest hope, that reformist movement will develop post-disclosure and fairly quickly. And, of course, that, to me, is maybe the most important aspect of all of this. Knowing that there's ETs here is like, hey, great, there's ETs here. Getting our act together so that we don't destroy this planet and ourselves, that is far more significant, frankly.
All right, Steve, please stand by. You and I have to take a short break. Exonation, Stephen Bassett is our special guest this hour. www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe, dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and now throughout Europe on Radio X in Belgium. Are you a believer? Or are you a skeptic? Or are you just a person like me that wants to find out what the truth really is? Love to have your emails. Send them to me. If you've got a guest you'd like us to bring on the show, if there's a special topic, send an email to xzoneradiotv.com. As it stands right now in New Hampshire, in the New Hampshire primary, for the Democrats, Bernie Sanders is leading with 59%, and for the Republicans, the Trump with 34%. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive
Manifestation is driven by imagination, intent, and passion. In our culture, all three have been distorted and disabled by modern media and exploitation. Re-engage your imagination and your passion by entering into the world of paranormal romance. Kahir O'Donnell takes her readers on an exciting journey into the endless possibilities of loving, passionate, and mutually respectful male-female relationship. Her latest book, The Long Dark Night, features special ops adventure, a daring rescue, a psychic woman from the stars, and a special agent that will die to protect her. The Long Dark Night by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or Amazon.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money in abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. My special guest of this hour, Stephen Bassett, www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. Stephen, we talked about the day after disclosure, but what will the disclosure do to the financial world?
Yeah, that's extraordinarily complex to assess. I think certainly disclosure will generate uncertainty, and markets do not like uncertainty.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why disclosure, if it comes from the president, will be on a Friday, because they want a couple of days for the financial markets to at least contemplate it. Mm-hmm. And they might shut the markets down for a few days in the following week, don't know. So you might see some people selling in stocks, certainly. You might see some of that. Okay, so well and good. Now, disclosure per se, just the presence of extraterrestrials, doesn't in and of itself have much impact on any particular financial market other than aerospace. Clearly, people will be buying aerospace stocks early on. But there's more to this than just the announcement, as you know. As the information comes out, one of the things we're going to learn about or get confirmed with detail is to what degree, to how much technology has been obtained from crash vehicles, how much has been reverse engineered in the energy area and the propulsion area and so forth, and as well as possibly other technologies. These have significant implications for financial markets and for industry. The most profound is, of course, the energy systems of the craft. If they are extraordinarily good, if they are paradigm-changing technologies, which I believe we have studied, I know we have, as a matter of fact, studied extensively for decades, and may have, in fact, quote, solved, then we could be looking at a paradigm shift that would eliminate fossil fuels much faster than anyone ever imagined. Well, this is going to affect the oil industry and so forth. And you can go down the line, and you can sort of say, well, that industry is going to be affected, this is going to be affected. But that's nothing unusual about that. I mean, over the millennia, over the centuries, rather, and over even the decades, you constantly see technological breakthroughs that help one industry hurt another. So what's most important, though, if you look at the overall, the global economy and the totality of the economics and the financial world and the industrial world, these new technologies have extraordinary potential to create great wealth, many jobs, drop prices of energy and thus free up trillions of dollars and so forth. And so ultimately, economically and industrially, we benefit from major technological paradigm shifts, which the propulsion and energy of these ET craft would represent. So again, I'm not too worried. Short term, you're going to see fluctuations and so forth, and people say, well, that's not a good thing. Well, hell, that's happened before. It happens all the time. So the idea that, well, we can't know the truth about the ET presence because there might be some fluctuations in the industrial base is ludicrous. And so we will get disclosure, and if we're wise, we'll underreact in terms of immediate decisions and see where things are going to go. But there will be plenty of people speaking to that post-disclosure, and I anticipate a mature response from both the financial and the industrial sectors.
How about the religious ramifications?
Not as great as people think. I hear this all the time. Religion is incredibly tenacious and been around a long time, thousands of years. It's not going away. The Catholic Church, as many people know, has already made many, many statements and is clearly preparing for this announcement, and I don't expect any problems there. Asian religions, no problems there. Within the evangelical community, there'll be some stress, but not too significant. The one area where that one might have some concerns, and that is the Muslim faith. And the reason is that faith is under enormous pressure right now because of political realities and also physical realities, where you have millions of Muslims who are in refugee status, they're in dangers and so forth, and enormous amount of uncertainty. And this will be extraordinary information that suddenly enters their worldview. And so it's hard to predict how that is going to affect their status. But from a purely religious doctrinal approach, it's not really a serious matter for them. Again, I think the overall impact on religion, when things sort out, will be far, far less than some of the negativists have been trying to put out as part of the propaganda to dissuade disclosure. I just don't see this problem. Religion is going to be just fine post-disclosure. In fact, as I've said many times, I think you'll see religious membership go up post-disclosure, because these are just sentient beings. They're not gods. There's absolutely nothing about the evidence that we have amassed on this and phenomena that indicates that they're gods. They're sentient beings. They're smarter than us, probably. They have better technology, but they live and die just like us. And so, again, they don't transcend religion, and I don't anticipate too much disruption.
All right, so first of all, there's disclosure. Then how long after disclosure do you anticipate contact?
That's the real big question. Well, theoretically, contact, for instance, will only happen when the ETs want it, open contact. Mm-hmm. So that's up to them. So you can't say. It's really nothing more than a guesstimate. As I've said many times, as I look at the whole history of this, going back to 47, and particularly everything that's happened in the last 20 years, the sense I have gotten from it, which I really have not shaken, I still feel is an appropriate response, is that this is ultimately leading to open contact, and that this disclosure event, this sort of self-acknowledgement in an orderly fashion by the social contracts in the world, it's about 200 of them, servicing over 7 billion people, that this has to take place, needs to take place, in order for the open contact to occur with less disruption, less stress on our system. Mm-hmm. And this whole business about the non-intervention thing, that you see in Star Trek.
Yeah.
I just don't buy it. Never have. I think they've been intervening forever, but still, open contact is a big deal. So, based on that, And based upon where we are technologically and the learning curve, the steepness of the learning curve I anticipate post-disclosure, I would put it around 2 years. I mean, I just sort of like that number, around 2 years after disclosure, self-disclosure on this planet. I think open contact will take place. Of course, as soon as I say that, what will happen is they'll say, okay, you've disclosed, great, then we're leaving. And they all just go back and say, we'll get back to you in a couple thousand years, see how you're doing. You know, if that happens, I will be very unhappy fellow. I mean, you know, but, you know, the ETs will do what they're going to do. I just have my gut feeling is don't be surprised to see open contact 2 years or so after disclosure.
What is the hardest part about the job that you do, trying to get disclosure to happen?
Lack of funds. The inability to really fund what needs to be done. The truth embargo has been very effective in preventing people from putting any serious money behind this, and by that I mean a fraction of the kind of money that's put in saving the whales from the Japanese whaling fleet. It's an endless struggle, and everybody in the field that I work with are broke, poor, and it's very difficult to bring the money in, and that's the number one most significant hardship in doing this.
What would be your first words to ET if you had the opportunity of being one of the very first people to greet ET?
I'm trying to imagine this in my mind.
Yeah,
Rob. I'm someone with a pretty good sense of humor. I couldn't risk. I mean, this is a no-brainer setup. I mean, it's like, what took you so long? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
That's what you got to say.
Yeah.
You know, what took you so long? And I would hope they'd appreciate the humor in that and not immediately vaporize me.
I guess so. Steve, in all the people that you've met who have had encounters and sightings, is there a common thread?
Boy. Well, you say encounters and sightings. I mean, sightings is one thing. I mean, people see things in the sky, and I think a lot of them have seen the real deal, and they're almost always impressed. It always has impacts them, expands their thinking a little bit, and that's for sightings. Contact is a different matter. I've talked with many contactees, and contact is such an intense and profound thing that, and the number of people I think that are involved in this kind of covert contact is a large number. It's a very big number. We're running the gambit of every kind of person you can imagine, and so the response that people have just varies. Huge spectrum of response. I mean, you've got contactees that are nuclear physicists. You've got contactees that are working as clerks in 7-Elevens. It's just you've got contactees with huge education, very little education, and in between. And the experiences vary. How the ETs are interacting with them varies. And so in some cases, it's a very positive kind of thing. It goes real well. Others, not so positive. And so it's really all over the place. The one thing in common, though, it profoundly affects them. Nobody as a contactee isn't profoundly affected. Just never encountered that. So that's the best way I can answer that question.
How do you separate the wheat from the chaff when you're dealing with the UFO phenomena and the different people that it brings out? You know, and let's face it, this has been it's been a great time for people who are looking to get into the UFO field because there's so much information and disinformation on the internet. Like, how do you separate the fact from the fiction?
Yeah. Well, after the inability to raise enough funding to do the job right and soon, the number two obstacle is separating the wheat from the chaff. Because you've got two things here, particularly from the standpoint of the advocacy work, which doesn't really get underway until after the Cold War, meaning in the early 90s. And the Internet comes on board mid-90s. So you have two things since the mid-90s forward. One, well, first of all, you have the truth embargo, which is now in its 68th year, roughly, almost 7 decades, where the information pool has been polluted, disinformation has been pumped in to undermine the in the effort by the citizens to resolve the matter. So that's created a mess. And, of course, the ridicule factor, which is key to the truth embargo, obviously just opens the door for people to have fun with the issue and do hoaxes, right? And so there's plenty of hoaxing. And you also have, and then, of course, the Internet comes along, which makes it extremely easy to do all of those things, to put in disinformation, and also to hoax. So the situation we have, I think, today, when you taking into account everything on the Internet plus all the books that have been written, that at least 50%, maybe as high as 75% of all the information currently available is false. Either because whoever has created the information is simply wrong, they just got it wrong, I know that happens, or because it's deliberately false on the part of just private citizens creating hoaxes or whatever, screwing around, having fun, or it's false because of government disinformation. That's tough. That's like trying to drink water that's 75% polluted. That's going to kill you. And so the challenge is you have to develop enough of a knowledge base, and also it helps to have decent education, so that you can, as best you can, separate the wheat from the chaff. And then once you've gotten, once you're able to sort of just push the complete nonsense off to the side, then you're left with information that runs a gambit from 5, 10, 15% probability up to 99.9% probability as being accurate and true. And so you have to sort of work your way through that. It is very difficult. And then you've got people coming at you from all directions that have various degrees of what we'll call veracity in terms of what they know or think. But this wouldn't be the case if the government had embargoed it for 70 years. Trust me. If the government had done to nuclear physics what it's done to the ET reality, I assure you the whole world of nuclear physics would be a complete mess. Right? It would be a fiasco. So this is the cost of government intervention in the truth. It wastes time, it wastes people's lives, it wastes money, and so forth. This is why we don't want to do this anymore, and I hope that post-disclosure that will be a significant topic of discussion. So for those that come to the field without much education, without that level of discernment, it's assuming they care, and they may not. I mean, it's there to have fun. But if they care, then they really are walking through a hall of mirrors, and without a whole lot of resource to figure out what's real, what's not, and it's not easy and tough for them. I'm really sympathetic with people. I'm
Sure.
constantly confronted with people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. I've got it completely wrong or whatever, but I'm very sympathetic. I don't really blame them, and I appreciate at least they're trying. They're trying to engage the issue, and they get a lot of points for that. The fundamental culprit here in terms of the truth process is the government, the U.S. government, and that's who has to change.
Hey, Steve, as always, it's great talking to you. We're running out of time really fast here. If people would like to make a difference and donate to your cause, donate to the work you're doing at Paradigm Research Group, how can they do that?
That's simple. You go to the main page, paradigmresearchgroup.org, and there's a support link right there. Click on it and decide if you want to help out. By the way, Rob, I want to mention before we go that I have done 1,200 interviews over the last 18 years, and I'll tell you, few, if any, hosts are able to ask or do ask more concise, appropriate, clear questions than you. I mean, you really, if every one of the hosts were like you, man, I'd tell you it would be gold. We're making a lot of progress. But, of course, you've done so much, so many shows, and your knowledge base is so great. But I hope people appreciate just how good you are at getting information out and asking the right questions. And just thought I'd mention that.
My friend, I thank you very much for your kind words. And, Steve, you have an open invitation here. If there's anything we can do, we will. Give out your website one more time, my friend. ParadigmResearchGroup.org. Steve Bassett has been our guest this hour, Exo Nation. www.paradigmresearchgroup.org. And I can assure you that Steve will be back with us in the future. And we've got to put our heads together and figure out how we can get some funding so that Steve and his people can get the work that they need to get done. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. The X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction, and fiction, well, sometimes it turns out to be smoke being blown. Oh, never mind, let's not go there. I'll be back on the other side of this break with the news. And don't forget, X Zone Nation, we're now heard in Belgium on Radio X. We'll be back. Don't go away.